Okay, and with that, I will hand it over to Sandra.
Hi. So good to see you all. I'm honored and extremely pleased to welcome Carla McCabe to the Schemel Forum. We've had the pleasure of welcoming her to the community to be the CEO of one of our most treasured assets, WVIA. Years ago, I heard Bill Moyers refer to NPR as the People's University. That metaphor has remained with me through the years. It is still true that there are households without books, without newspapers, and possibly without TVs. But just about everyone has a radio. That said, the public media are not only important to people who don't have other sources of news. To many of us, NPR and PBS are our most reliable sources of news. Carla grew up in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and came to the US, like so many in the world, for a better life. Though our country is far from perfect, perfection is not a reality, but striving for perfection is. President Biden, our own Joe Biden, said at the very end of his inaugural speech that we are a country of possibilities. I believe that, and I believe that is why we have gifted journalists like Carla McCabe coming here. So why America? Why Scranton? Carla's choice is in harmony with ours. She sees possibilities here, and so do we. Scranton, like any other small challenged city in the country, needs informed and engaged citizens who are committed to working toward a better tomorrow, using their talents and skills to help us know who we are and who we aspire to be. The public media belongs to us all. And with that, I'd like to welcome Carla McCabe to the podium.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I really appreciate the warm welcome you've provided. From the second I got here, both you and Maury have welcomed us with open arms. As much as I'm in the media, though, being in front of the camera is not really something that comes so easily or naturally to me.
Okay.
But when you invited me to speak, I couldn't say no. This opportunity's really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I want to thank you for believing in me and for believing that I have value to add to this conversation. In seeing the speakers before me, I knew the pressure was on. I was also very lucky in getting to meet the wonderful Sisters of Mercy, one of whom is Irish and the other is an adopted daughter of Ireland. They welcomed me so as soon as I got into the area as well, and they quickly became friends and mentors. And they also gave me the confidence to speak today. So as you can see, I'm not in my office. This is not actually where I do all of the busy work. I'm in the studio at WVIA. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't give the station and the amazing team here a good plug. So I'll show some pictures and visual representations really when I'm going through my discussion, just to really show when I'm talking about where I came from. I'll represent it through some images. So America, the Farther Shore. The title was inspired by Seamus Heaney's poem, The Cure at Troy. So hope for a great sea change on the far side of revenge. Believe that a farther shore is reachable from here. America, the Farther Shore as a title spoke to me because I come from the small island of Ireland where we had two options: look inward and become self-absorbed in the sectarian struggle, which has marred my homeland, or look outward and yearn to learn, to explore, to discover, and to be enriched by the dignity of difference. So I come from the city of Belfast, the capital city of Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, my home city is mostly known across the globe for all the wrong reasons. And yet it was in this place and in this space that I call home that I was taught values and given opportunities that have sustained me on my journey so far. And so the title I've chosen to speak about is so much more relevant today as we find ourselves on the eve of St. Patrick's Day when the whole world claims to be Irish. I am sorry I'm missing out on what I've heard is a wonderful St. Patrick's Day parade, but hopefully we can make up for it in September, I believe. A little background about me. I'm the youngest of 7, and I like to remind each of my siblings that quite frequently. I might have even got some preferential treatment growing up. Our parents pushed us to focus on education. They told us it would take us anywhere. My daddy's favorite line growing up was, "I'm not always right, but I'm seldom wrong." That was in relation to his push for education in particular, and I would have to agree with him on that one. So I went to an all-girls Catholic school from the age of 4 to the age of 11, and then sat an exam known as the 11 plus, which would determine your next school. So if you pass that exam, you have the option to go to a grammar school. If you don't pass, you would attend a secondary school. The education at home is very different to what it is here, and I'm maybe a little thankful of that because I'm not so sure we could have afforded to pay the university fees we have here. The focus for a university education began in school at the age of 13 or 14, where discussions would start to take place about what you wanted your career path to be. We then chose subjects that would ensure our path to the course we wanted to study in university. And I honestly wasn't sure what I wanted to study or if I even wanted to go to university. I do have to admit my grades weren't exactly up to standard. I just got enough to get me into university, thankfully. And it wasn't until then, when I was there, that I realized and actually appreciated the need for that piece of paper to get me to where I wanted to be. Then I shocked myself further because I decided to pivot slightly from hospitality, and I studied a master's in communications, advertising and public relations. But I still wasn't sure what my dream job actually was going to be. I remember going for an interview for a job, and it was for a charity. It was the Northern Ireland Cancer Fund for Children. And we grew up with this charity. My dad did a lot of volunteering for them for many years. And I was so excited about this potential job because I knew that charity so well. And I felt that I was qualified. I felt like this was a really good opportunity for me. But lo and behold, I didn't get that job. A couple of months later, an unexpected opportunity arose within the BBC though. So I started in PR and quickly realized my love for production and the media industry. I remember attaching myself to a producer there actually at the BBC, and I literally shadowed his every move just to really absorb as much as I could to really fully embrace and understand the industry there. Looking back, I ended up exactly where I was supposed to. And I feel so fortunate that that was my first media job. It was in a place where the internal culture wasn't overshadowed by the political divide. We worked on so many shows where actual humour was the key to storytelling about our political environment. We worked on a series, a fun series actually called Give My Headpiece, one that was beloved by both sides of the divide. We had to find some light of the situation at home, and we tried that for humour. Not everybody would get it though. Everything at that time was about religion. That was your entire identity. Opportunities were certainly not the same for Catholics. I would say maybe 90% at that time of the police force was Protestant. Your name, if it was an Irish name, that was broadcast on what religion you were. Your address was the same thing. It was a dead giveaway. That's why there was such a push for us to educate ourselves and seek opportunities further afield. Our parents instilled a strong work ethic in us and always reminded us that there's a big world outside of Belfast. What's interesting to me though is that my dad would always tell us about how sports, that was the one thing that brought Catholics and Protestants together for him growing up. And it was the one time that he felt he could escape the reality. He loved to play football, and I'm talking about soccer, the proper football. He had Protestant friends through playing football, and he even played basketball for Ireland. Yes, Ireland has a basketball team. I'm not so sure how good they are though. But we lived a pretty sheltered life when it came to the Troubles. It wasn't openly discussed in a bitter way, more so from a perspective of both sides and a hopeful future for Northern Ireland. Looking back now, I completely understand why our parents did that. It would have been so easy to become bitter and resent the political struggle that sadly was so normal to us. It was so segregated. You would attend either a Catholic or a Protestant school, and you'd be labelled by the uniform you wore. You could only go into certain areas, and you would know if these areas were Catholic or Protestant because the curbs and footpaths were painted red, white and blue or green, white and orange. Even the football tops, that was another way to identify your religion. The Celtic team was Catholic, Rangers team was Protestant. When fans from home would even attend those games, they would go to Scotland and the buses and boats had to be segregated. They couldn't all go as one. Bomb scares were a regular occurrence and they became so common. We didn't take them seriously. We didn't really rush ourselves to get out of there. We had to go through metal detectors and have our bags searched just going into a shopping centre. Armed soldiers would be right outside your front door as you leave for school. And I actually remember one time a friend of mine came over from Manchester that I went to college with, and we were walking and a few armoured vehicles passed by and she panicked. She couldn't believe these soldiers were just standing here brandishing weapons. I didn't even recognise it. I didn't know how shocking it could be for someone that wasn't from there. That was my norm. Was it normal? No. But you learn to accept it and embrace any opportunity available to you. My mum would say, good manners and a good education is priceless, and both will take you anywhere you want to go. She pushed us to become strong and independent and told us we didn't need to depend on anyone to live the kind of life we wanted to live. For me though, America was my opportunity from a young age. I believed I would make it my home one day. I'm so grateful for those before me who made America their home, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how that came to be. What was it about our small nation, and how did we manage to become embedded into a new culture while at the same time savouring our own? I think a big part of it is how storytelling is embedded in Irish culture. Storytelling is key to building a community. By telling stories, we gain further insight and knowledge into someone else's situation and come away with a greater understanding of our own experience. Through the stories of Irish immigrants coming to America, future generations of Americans of all races and all backgrounds are able to gain a perspective that they can relate to and empathise with. So what is that story? What brought the Irish to these farther shores? A little history. Many opted or had no choice but to leave their homeland to come to this land, our nearest neighbour across the Atlantic, and we came in droves. The Irish immigrants who entered the United States from the 16th to the 20th centuries were changed by America, and they also changed this nation. They and their descendants made incalculable contributions in industry, organised labour, religion, literature, music, art, and indeed politics. And today, speaking from Scranton, Pennsylvania, one of the greatest sons of this city, the 46th President of the United States of America, has very strong Irish roots. So why did we come? And why did this nation, which can claim some 32 million or 9.7% Americans with Irish heritage, a number which is over 4 times larger than the entire population of Ireland, 6.7 million. The main reasons for the early Irish immigration to this distant shore was to escape political and religious persecution. Dire poverty caused by the natural disaster of the Irish potato famine from 1845 to 1852 forced generations to come to America. The vast majority of those who had arrived on these shores previously had been Protestant or Presbyterians, and they quickly assimilated, not least because English was their first language, and most, but certainly not all, had skills and some small savings to start their new lives. The arrival of destitute and desperate Catholics, many of whom spoke only Irish or a smattering of English, played out very differently. Suspicious of the majority Anglo-American Protestant, a language barrier, illiteracy, and lack of skills all meant that this wave of Irish immigrants sought refuge amongst their own kind. As the potato famine was raging in Ireland, the Irish came from 2 directions: by transatlantic voyage to the east coast of Boston and New York, or by land or sea from Canada, then called British North America. Those who survived the journey often had just one thought on their minds: to be free of British oppression and hunger. notwithstanding the lack of trust between the predominantly Protestant American-born middle class and the impoverished Catholics who arrived in the mid-19th century. The main problem for the new arrivals was a lack of skills. While some were blacksmiths, masons, most of the men were unskilled labourers and women domestics. The American Civil War, 1861 to 65, was probably the turning point in how these Irish immigrants were accepted into this country. Many thousands of Irish wholeheartedly participated in the war. They made up the majority of no less than 40 Union regiments and gained a certain amount of respect and acceptance from Americans as a result. The education of the Irish working class also played a major role in their social mobility. Many Irish nuns followed the immigrants, founded schools, and stressed the importance of education and skills as a way forward. Soon, second or third generation Irish Americans had moved up the social and managerial ladder from their early labouring work. Some were even entering the professions. Of course, this was not the lot of the majority. In the 1900 census, there were still hundreds of thousands of Irish immigrants living in poverty, mostly urban slums. But economic circumstances were improving for a significant proportion, and the Irish as a group were gaining footholds in the workplace, especially in the labour or trade union movement, the police and the fire service. Their sheer numbers helped, and the large Irish populations of cities such as Boston, Chicago, New York, they were all able to get their candidates elected to power, so launching the Irish American political class. The never to be forgotten island home. Back in the island of Ireland, things were changing too. And with the arrival of free education for all, a new generation of educated Irish were taking hold of power. Some examples: people like the Nobel laureate Schemel helped to shape modern Ireland. His poems refused to shy away from the unpleasant political realities, helping us, particularly in the north of the island, begin our painful but necessary self-examination. On the political scene, another Nobel laureate, John Hume, was a giant among men, someone who Sandra is very familiar with. In his Nobel lecture in 1998, he said this: "Difference is of the essence of humanity. Difference is an accident of birth, and it should therefore never be the source of hatred or conflict. The answer to difference is to respect it. Therein lies a most fundamental principle of peace, respect for diversity." John Hume recognized the need for political players in America. By this time, Irish Americans who'd moved into politics, but who had never forgotten their Irish roots, were carefully watching the situation and the discrimination that was ongoing in Ireland. For example, as the Troubles were spiraling out of control and thousands had died, it was powerful Irish Americans who realized intervention was needed. This was surprising to me too, actually. On St. Patrick's Day, this was one I didn't know. 1977, President Jimmy Carter made the first ever presidential statement on Northern Ireland. He was persuaded to make a statement that had been drafted by the Four Horsemen, the most powerful Irish lobby in American political history. Ted Kennedy, Tip O'Neill, Pat Moynihan, and Hugh Carey wrote the statement in consultation with John Hume. That statement was the beginning of the peace process. The American influence continued to be strong in relation to peace in Northern Ireland, and I vividly remember hearing that the President of the United States was coming to Belfast to turn the Christmas tree lights on. I vividly remember telling my father this, and he didn't believe me for a second. He said, "No, it's the Power Rangers that are actually turning it on." It was usually a pop star, but Bill Clinton was coming. He was coming to Belfast. Regardless of your affiliation, this was huge. There was 80,000 people gathered. Van Morrison took the stage and sang Days Like This. And I promise I'm not going to break into song here. When everything falls into place, like the flick of a switch, well, my mama told me, there'll be days like this. Such a memorable moment. Because of this distant shore, that distant shore, and my generation of young Irish men and women grew up in peace. The Good Friday Agreement was signed in April 1998. What a momentous time. Still to this day, I get goosebumps thinking about it. It was so good. It's still so good to see my nephews and nieces at home grow up in a more peaceful environment and not live in fear, but instead be excited and proud to live in the new Belfast that's welcoming and vibrant. The pull of this land in Irish memory is forever strong. This is the country of opportunity, of generosity and memory. Lessons learned in the old country were carried to this new country and embedded into the hearts of successive generations. Those who fled because of the famine told stories of evictions, starvations, and of shiploads of food being sent out of Ireland to feed other nations. While Ireland was dealing with the potato famine, all the other crops, wheat, barley, maize, could and should have fed the starving Irish. Those who left never forgot. The current 46th President of the United States, a Scranton native, is one such example of those who did not forget. His relative, Edward Blewett from Ballina in County Mayo, had saved many lives by overseeing the public relief efforts before he himself emigrated. His contribution to Irish famine victims will be published later this year by the Irish historian Christine Keenley in a booklet remembering those who made a difference. The 46th President of the United States has that compassion embedded within him. He carries in his genes the memory of how his family assisted those who were in desperation because of the famine. And now today, that same spirit of decency, responsibility, and respect for the dignity of the human person fuels the new president. And so today, I come to these farther shores as the new president and CEO of WVIA. How did I get here? A quick story actually about my first media job. It was in BBC Northern Ireland. It was around 16 years ago. And I recall watching a documentary series, and it was on BBC. It was airing while I worked there. It was called Facing the Truth, 3-part series. I remember how intense it was. The premise seemed real simple: to bring victims and perpetrators of the conflict in Northern Ireland together for dialogue. This was a first, and it was raw. Nobel Peace Prize laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu oversaw these meetings, which allowed unprecedented conversation between those responsible for violence and those who were hurt during the conflict in Northern Ireland. I remember thinking only BBC would produce this type of programme. Only they would be brave enough to tackle such sensitive issues and do them justice. They played such a crucial role in a groundbreaking effort to promote healing and reconciliation in Northern Ireland. So I stayed with BBC for a few years and then went on to work for an independent production company, which I loved because it exposed me to the fast-paced commercial broadcasting world. I gained so much wonderful experience there, working on international productions. I certainly worked the clock round at that time, but I also felt drawn that I really wanted to go back to BBC and public media. Fast forward to 2013, I find myself at the PBS station in Kansas City, Missouri. PBS is very comparable to BBC in their mission and values, so it was like I found my home again when I landed there. I think we can attribute our success to the people we're surrounded by, and I have been so lucky. The CEO there in Kansas City at the station was such a mentor for me. I learned so much from him, and he provided me with so many opportunities, exposing me to the broader public media system, not just that station in Kansas City. He always supported me, and he knew I was ambitious, so he was very proud when I got this job here. I'm starting to worry that he was looking rid of me, actually. Going back to the series I'd mentioned, it was a local story, but it had national and international appeal. These were stories that had to be told. One of the first series I worked on in Kansas City was called Redream. It was about reimagining the American dream. This was about people living in America as they navigate opportunity, meet obstacles, and pursue happiness in this 21st century. It was a national digital series interviewing people throughout the country in collaboration with 14 other PBS stations. I may seem biased because I firmly believe the American dream is alive and well, but maybe that's because I'm not from here. I do have a real appreciation for it though, and what a fulfilling start to my journey, hearing multiple perspectives discuss their American dream. And here I am now in Scranton, leading a local PBS NPR station with huge potential, a local voice with the potential to speak to a global audience, a media organisation that can tell stories that reflect our community, yet relate to and/or impact other countries. We can and we will have impact through our storytelling. Our plan is, here at WVIA, to increase local storytelling. We began in October with a weekly TV series, Keystone Edition. I'm actually at the set here right now. This multi-platform series facilitates long-form conversations that identify and address the biggest issues facing northeastern and central Pennsylvania. Topics covered include the pandemic, voting, senior services, workforce development, artistic inclusivity, and so much more. The programme shares the stories of the people of this area, letting viewers and listeners at home know they aren't alone, and connects them to resources in their community also. As public media, we shine a spotlight on organisations making positive change, and while we are only 21 episodes in, we already have over 50 community partners on this series alone. I'll stop just short of telling too much on how to watch, but the information's here on screen if you're interested. Our next push will be to recruit some reporters here locally to increase our local output on radio as we plan to localise Morning Edition and All Things Considered. This is the first step in increasing our local news coverage. This was an announcement that I just shared with the team yesterday, and they are extremely excited. This content will spill over onto other platforms also. As we're focused on being platform agnostic, we cannot survive producing one story for one platform anymore. Instead, any one story produced will be impossible to ignore because it will show up on radio, TV, online, social. We have to go to the audience. There's so much competition out there for audiences now. Considering the annual budget for PBS national content is less than that of a big series for Netflix, we have our work cut out for us. But our competitive advantage again is being local. I do find it interesting that amongst all of this noise and the streaming services and the opportunities to consume content, we still somehow find it hard to find something good to watch. It was great when we had 4 or 5 channels. Somehow we had more to watch, but I can say we will continue to do our best to entertain, to inform, educate, and inspire as your local PBS NPR affiliate. I carry within me great hope in my new role. My goal is to ensure that we are embedded in the core of the communities we serve, producing programmes that reflect who we are, and at the same time open our hearts and minds to the world we live in. I will be forever grateful to those who paved the way to allow a Belfast girl the opportunity to be in this position. A 39-year-old female immigrant, I hope my story inspires young women in Ireland and helps them pursue these opportunities, either at home or further afield. I also see so much progression in the distant shores I left behind. Huge strides have been made thanks to education, and more opportunities are available. There's more inclusivity. I'm so proud of where I came from, but I'm also proud to call America my home. I'll give my final word to Seamus Heaney on this eve of St. Patrick. Hope is not optimism, which expects things to turn out well, but something rooted in the conviction that there is good worth working for. May each of us do our own bit to work and dream and believe that another world is possible. Thanks to each of you.
Is there a way to have an applause?
I lost that, sorry, Peter.
Does anybody have any questions for Carla?
Oh gosh. Well, can I make I have some feedback, so I have to be careful that somebody's got the mic on. Can you? Okay. So at least you can hear me. First of all, now all of you know why Carla is part of our wonderful broadcast medium. It's great to have her part of the community, and quite candidly, the story she tells is more reinforcement for all of us, certainly at WVIA, that the implications of diversity, which she is very focused on, I must say, are are part of our DNA. At least that's the hope. So my thanks to Carla for becoming part of the community, to be as much a contributor as she is, and frankly, telling the story. And I have to admit that Carla said to me she wasn't sure that her story would have any significance in to this listening audience, and that she was going to be preempted by all the stars that are so much a part of the Schemel Forum. And I must say that she's done a remarkable job. And so my thanks to her. And I'm sure there are questions, but I wanted to make sure I made the comment. We're very, very happy to have you with us, Carla. And thank you so much for the great story.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, Maury, I'm gonna, Sandra, unmute, okay?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Carla.
Hi, Maury.
Yeah. When I knew the demographics of Northern Ireland, it was always 2 to 1, 2 Protestants, 1 Catholic. Now that is substantially being altered, and it is likely that it will be maybe even a majority of Catholics in the North in the near future. So I'm asking you, what are you think are the prospects of reunification of Northern Ireland and the Republic in the next couple of decades?
It's a very interesting question at the minute, Maury, because of everything going on with Brexit, which I'm not as in touch with, but I think there's a lot of challenges at the moment anyway for the North, and there's a lot of pressure on the Good Friday Agreement as a result. So I don't have an exact answer for you. I think though there's going to be a push to ensure that peace continues in Northern Ireland. That's my hope anyway, but there is certainly a lot of friction at the moment. You're absolutely right in saying though, I think it would be much more even. I would say a much more even split now with Catholics and Protestants. But I wish I had the answer for you, other than, as I say, I really hope that the Brexit and all of these implications from the European Union, that there's not going to be any implications I just hope it's not going to be detrimental to the Good Friday Agreement.
Thank you. Yep.
I have a question. I was in, my wife and I were in Ireland 2 years ago. We spent a couple of weeks there, and we were in Belfast and we were in Derry. And I know that the population in the North is primarily Protestant, but I was surprised to find out that in Derry, the Catholics are in the majority. I did not know that. Are there other places in Northern Ireland, Carla, where that's true?
I don't know the exact numbers, to be honest, but I do think, as Maury just mentioned, I would say it's more of we're getting close to a 50-50 split throughout Northern Ireland. So I do think it is, I don't want to say better because that'll sound wrong, but it's definitely getting to a place where it's equal when it comes to Catholics and Protestants. Derry, I like how you say Derry as well, rather than Londonderry.
Yeah.
Sister, go ahead.
Thanks, Carla. From as one Northern Irish woman to another, I'm from Derry, and I think I just love the way you presented this farther shore from our farther shore. I think to the question about Maury's question, the reunification of Ireland, I would have difficulties with the reunification of Ireland at present, because I think the Republic of Ireland needs to understand that the Northern Irish, we are a different breed. Our culture is different, our education is different. And often when you are in the Republic of Ireland, we're seen as the other, the Northerners, there they go again. So I think the Republic, if they want to be a welcoming place, they need to understand our culture and our place, because we have an awful lot to give, we who are from the north of Ireland. But well done, my friend Carla. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you so much. But I couldn't agree more.
Carla, it looks like there's a question that came in through the chat. Can you see it or do you want me to read it?
Would you mind reading it?
Sure. Northern Ireland has made so much progress in peace, but yet the school education system remains very segregated. Having been through that school system, what is your take on this?
It's a good question. And I think for more progress to be made, we're going to have to further integrate schools. It certainly didn't do me any harm going to an all-girls Catholic school, but that was because I had parents that were very open-minded and didn't want us to be one way or the other. And I think, again, sports definitely helped with that, amongst other things. I think there's more integrated schools, but I still think there's a long way to go. And we're not going to really instill change there until that's something that can really happen more often.
I'm wondering if you know, I don't know why I'm getting this feedback. If the travel in the industry between the North and the Republic of Ireland is being affected by Brexit.
Can you repeat that for me? Sorry, the first part of the question.
If the travel and the industry between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland is being affected by Brexit, because that was something that I had read was an issue.
Yeah, and again, I just seen something about that yesterday, actually, whereby there's issues because there's a lot of delays in transport. Northern Ireland, there's a loophole, obviously, because of the Good Friday Agreement, that they can still trade within as part of the EU. So it's slightly different. It's very, very complicated, though, because we don't have a hard border. So there's a lot of controversy at the minute. I think Boris Johnson said something yesterday about the fact that everything's slowing down as far as trade, and there's a lot of frustration at home. And I did see again, just as I think on Monday, the White House got involved again, and they had something to say about it, because they too want to ensure, it keeps coming back to ensuring that the Good Friday Agreement is going to be safe and that we don't go back to our old ways.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Carla. Thanks for the presentation. It's interesting that you talked about focusing on telling local stories, because there are so many of them and they're so interesting. Having grown up here, there was the Polish neighborhood, the Irish neighborhood, the Italian neighborhood, just where people had their own language and began to live together. But interestingly, you referenced Edward Blewett, and one of my cousins, actually, I don't know if Mickey's on here today, but one of Mickey's law partners did a presentation to my 200 immediate cousins, and we're related to Edward Blewett, but he did a very involved immigration story for the coal mines. So it's interesting you mentioned Edward Blewett. I'll send you his name so you might be able to access, but that was Tim Hinton, for anybody in the Schemelites that knows the story. Tim Hinton put the story together of Edward Blewett and my family, the Scanlons, and the local immigration story from the 1800s. Really.
That would be wonderful to share. I know that as a station well before my time, they covered quite a bit when it comes to Irish heritage here as well. And we are, as Peter had mentioned earlier, we're focused a lot on telling more diverse stories and looking at not just the Irish population, but we just did a recent video with the Bhutanese population, and we have a show coming up soon called American Portrait, where it shows the diversity that does exist here. So I'm excited to really just continue. I'm in a very unique and a really good position, because I've got a great team here that tell wonderful stories, and they're obviously helping me understand and embrace this area better as well. It's been challenging moving during this time, because I just got here in July, and not really having the opportunity to get out to meet people in person has been difficult, but I'm so excited. If this is anything to go by, and the wonderful people that I have already met, if that's anything to go by, I can't imagine what's ahead. So really excited.
Thank you.
I would like to make a suggestion, Carla, about the storytelling. Oh, yes, they do. One of the stories that I think needs to be told is the story of the nuns who taught in all the schools or ministered in the hospitals here in this area. There was once a time we had 3 Catholic hospitals staffed by nuns. Well, there's probably more than that, and every town practically had a Catholic school, which is now closed or nearly closed. And these women who staffed these institutions are slowly dying out. So there's a story to be told. It's almost like it's the presence of absence. And the absence is of the nuns who taught in some of these schools. And many of the people I would guess who were even on this forum listening to your wonderful speech and the stories you told, many of them, many of us were educated both for good and for ill in the Catholic schools that once existed in this area. And that's a story that needs to be told.
I will certainly take note. It's interesting. I did go and visit a local Catholic school with my nephew when he first moved, and it is unfortunate, and it's sad to know that that's something that, you know, there's no nuns, there's no teaching nuns there anymore. So it's something I mean, I would love to tell the story, but how do we then attract more? Is that possible? How do we try to attract more up and coming nuns to an area like this? Is it a dying trade? Is it possible?
It's a dying trade.
Carla, I have another question in the chat. It says, do you find it comforting or discomforting how strongly the allegiance to Ireland is in northeastern PA?
Comforting, most definitely. I mean, it's more welcoming, and I think we do tend to appreciate each other's stories as much as we embrace all cultures. It's always good to hear from other people who are from home and how they ended up here. My first week starting at WVIA was an introduction to Sister Deirdre, and it was interesting because I had a phone call from her given off to me about the fact that I had mentioned that in school at home I had to kneel down and make sure that the skirts touched the ground, and that was from my grammar school. That was from Fort William, but she was able to tell me, because that was certainly not those Mercy nuns. They would never make you do that. So I was put in my place from the outset.
Paula has a question. If you could go ahead and unmute.
I had occasion to go from Carrick Cross to Northern Ireland, to Belfast, to visit the linen factory. But when we got to the border, we had to go through a camouflaged area with military who got on the bus and checked our luggage and did everything. And then when we got into Belfast, there were some military at doorsteps at the homes, but we felt no problem. We got to the factory, got out of Belfast, and then I heard the next day somebody had been shot in Belfast. But is the military still at the border?
The military, no, not anymore. But now it's a good question at the moment, because I know there is a lot of I would say there's guards now when it comes to the border because of the trade for, you know, in relation to Brexit and everything. And some of my Irish friends on this could probably step in and tell that a little better. But as far as what you went through with the checkpoints, that's no longer there, thankfully. They are very strict at the moment at home with COVID, and they're still in lockdown. So even for anyone crossing the border, going from Belfast to, a lot of them love to go to Donegal, they're being stopped, and they're not allowed to leave the area. But that's a whole other, I mean, that's very different to what you experience and what I grew up with as well.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, okay. You've mentioned, you've mentioned John Hume.
No.
And it's okay. And Seamus. I know there are a lot of other distinguished people in Northern Ireland, and I wonder if you can mention a few more.
Sandra, I told you not to ask any difficult questions.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. Well, artists or people in politics or
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think politics now is very different to what it was again at home, because John Hume and the party that he represented, he was very much, just even like from that quote that I had mentioned, he was a very neutral party. I still think there is a divide with a lot of the political parties at home. I mean, there's a lot of artists and musicians at home. We have a fascination with one in particular called Terry Bradley, who we just love his artwork. It's very unique. It's very much appealing to us. And we also have good friends that it's the Maguire family, who they have for many years made the Borons and their artwork, the whole family. They're very, very, very well known here. But also I remembered seeing the Boron from Eamon Maguire in Bill Clinton's office. We were very lucky many years ago in going and visiting, doing the tour. And that was the first thing that stood out to us, that we'd seen this Boron with Eamon's name on it. I mean, there's many talented people that I worked with that might not be on the, you know, at the forefront as such, but people in BBC that I worked with that I still hold obviously in very high regard, but may not be known so much here. They would be stars in my eyes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, if not, we thank you for teaching us an awful lot about your country and yourself, your family, and your time here in America and why you're here. And we're very glad you're here. Thank you
so much. I appreciate it.
This is Frank speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead, Frank.
I hear the name Sister Deirdre. Sister Deirdre is there with the speaker. My youngest sister is named Deirdre, and it was very unusual. Can you tell us anything about Deirdre?
Yes. Deirdre is, she's known Deirdre the Sorrowful One. I've got a book, if you would like a copy of it. It tells the whole historical story of Deirdre. And in the north of Ireland, we say Deirdre. In the Republic of Ireland, they say Deirdre. So anyhow, it's the same person, but she was known as the Sorrowful One. And
The bishop, the priest.
I was given the name. My mother wanted me called Deirdre, and I was going to get baptized in the local cathedral. And when I was about to be baptized, the priest asked the name, and my mother said Deirdre Ann, and he said, "You're not calling the child after a pagan goddess." He stuck the name Patricia in front of my name. So I'm actually Patricia Deirdre Ann. And my mother came out of the church and she said, "No man's going to tell me what to call my child, you're Deirdre." So I have the great story of Deirdre of the Sorrows, and it's an old book, it's well fingered, but I'd be very happy to pass it on to your daughter so she knows her rich history of this great, and we're not sorrowful people, we're hopeful people.
I would love to see that. Yes, I would like to see that. Yeah.
Well, make
That'd be
sure
great.
send Carla your address and we can get it to you, or Sandra, okay?
I'll get it for her, Mickey. I'll get it to her.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good.
Okay, thank you, Carla, again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.